The morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured gardens of Windsor Castle, as Sergeant William Hayes adjusted his crimson uniform for what he thought would be another routine day. 23 years of service to the crown had taught him that beneath the polished surface of royal life, human drama played out just like anywhere else. But nothing could have prepared him for what he would witness that autumn day in 2023. William had earned his position through dedication and an unwavering sense of duty. Born in a small Yorkshire town to a family of modest means, he had joined the military at 18, seeking purpose and stability. His path to the Royal Guard began during his service in Afghanistan, where his bravery and leadership qualities caught the attention of his commanding officers. When an opportunity arose to serve the royal household, William seized it, viewing it as the pinnacle of his military career. The castle buzzed with its usual morning activity as staff prepared for the day ahead. William took his position outside the blue drawing room, where family meetings often took place. His role required him to remain invisible yet vigilant, a silent guardian whose presence ensured the safety and privacy of the royal family. Over the years, he had perfected the art of being present without being noticed, his ears trained to detect any potential threat, while his eyes remained fixed straight ahead. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor. William recognized the confident stride of Camilla, the queen consort, accompanied by her lady-in-waiting, Mrs. Sarah Thompson. They entered the drawing room, their voices carrying through the partially open door. What began as a discussion about upcoming royal engagements gradually shifted to more personal territory. The children seemed to be everywhere these days, Camilla remarked with a tone that made William's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. One can hardly have a proper conversation without little George interrupting with his endless questions about everything under the sun. And don't get me started on Charlotte's dramatic tendencies. The girl acts as if she's already performing for the cameras. Thompson murmured something in agreement, but William couldn't make out her exact words. His training had taught him to maintain composure in any situation, but hearing the Queen Consort speak dismissively about the young Prince George and Princess Charlotte stirred something deep within him. Catherine seems to encourage their exuberance, Camilla continued, her voice taking on a sharper edge. Perhaps if she spent less time trying to be the perfect mother for the press and more time teaching them proper royal decorum, we wouldn't have children running about like common street urchins at state functions. The words hit William like a physical blow. Throughout his years of service, he had observed the genuine love and care that Catherine, the Princess of Wales, showed her children. He had witnessed countless tender moments between mother and children during informal family gatherings, moments that revealed Catherine's dedication to giving her children as normal a childhood as possible within the constraints of royal life. Prince George, though only 10 years old, displayed a natural curiosity and intelligence that William found refreshing. During family picnics on the castle grounds, William had watched the young prince ask thoughtful questions about history, nature, and the responsibilities that would one day fall upon his shoulders. Far from being disruptive, the boy showed a genuine desire to understand the world around him. Princess Charlotte, at 8 years old, possessed a spirited personality that brought joy to those around her. William had observed her natural empathy during visits to charitable organizations, where she would instinctively reach out to comfort other children or elderly residents. Her so-called dramatic tendencies were simply the expressions of a bright, emotionally intelligent child who hadn't yet learned to suppress her natural reactions for the sake of protocol. The boy lacks focus, Camilla's voice continued from the drawing room. Yesterday, during the veterans ceremony, he kept fidgeting and whispering to his mother. In my day, children knew how to stand still and remain silent when required. Charles was impeccably behaved at that age. William remembered that ceremony vividly. Prince George had indeed been asking questions, but they were thoughtful inquiries about the medals the veterans wore and what battles they had fought in. The young prince's interest in honoring those who had served their country had been genuine and touching. William himself had been moved by the boy's respectful curiosity. The conversation in the drawing room shifted to Princess Charlotte's recent public appearance at a children's charity event. She was practically hanging off Catherine the entire time, Camilla complained. Clinging like some sort of, well, it was hardly dignified. A princess should maintain composure and independence, even at her age. William's hands clenched slightly at his sides as he recalled that event. Princess Charlotte had been visiting a hospital ward filled with seriously ill children. Her close proximity to her mother hadn't been clingy behavior, but rather the natural reaction of a compassionate child processing the emotional weight of seeing other children suffering. Catherine had handled the situation with remarkable grace, providing comfort to her daughter while still engaging meaningfully with the young patients. "And Louis," Camilla's voice took on an exasperated tone, "that child is absolutely wild, running about at the Jubilee celebrations, making faces at the cameras. It's embarrassing for the institution." Prince Louis, at 5 years old, had indeed been energetic during the lengthy Platinum Jubilee celebrations. But William had witnessed the behind-the-scenes moments that the cameras didn't capture. The little prince had sat quietly and attentively for hours during the more solemn portions of the ceremonies. His playful moments came during appropriate times when the formal proceedings had relaxed. His animated expressions during the flypast had brought smiles to millions of viewers worldwide, humanizing the royal family in a way that strengthened public affection for the monarchy. Mrs. Thompson's voice became clearer as she moved closer to the door. "Perhaps it's a generational difference, Your Majesty. Modern parenting styles do tend to be more permissive." "Permissive indeed," Camilla replied with a snort. "In my experience with my own children, and now my grandchildren, clear boundaries and expectations produce far better results. These three would benefit from a firmer hand and less coddling." William's thoughts turned to his own childhood experiences and the countless military families he had known over the years. He understood the delicate balance between discipline and nurturing, especially for children growing up under the intense scrutiny of public life. Catherine's approach to parenting struck him as remarkably balanced, providing structure and teaching respect while allowing her children to maintain their individual personalities and natural joy. The conversation in the drawing room continued, with Camilla expressing frustration about having to adjust royal schedules and protocols to accommodate the children's needs. "We can't have every family event turned into a circus because the children need special accommodations or might have tantrums," she declared. "The monarchy has functioned for centuries without such considerations." William found this particularly troubling, as he had observed how carefully Catherine and William planned their children's public appearances. They made thoughtful decisions about which events were appropriate for each child's age and temperament, and they had established clear expectations and consequences. The children's behavior at public events had been remarkably good considering their young ages and the pressure they faced. As the morning progressed, Camilla's complaints grew more specific and personal. She criticized Catherine's decision to homeschool the children initially, questioning whether they were receiving proper preparation for their royal duties. She expressed disapproval of their casual interactions with staff members, suggesting that such friendliness undermined the necessary hierarchy within the royal household. William knew these criticisms were unfounded. The children's education had been carefully planned to provide them with both academic excellence and real-world understanding. Their friendly demeanor towards staff reflected the values Catherine and William were instilling: respect for all people regardless of their position, kindness and genuine appreciation for those who served the family and the crown. The sound of approaching footsteps in the corridor signaled the end of the private conversation. Camilla and Mrs. Thompson prepared to leave for their next engagement, their voices fading as they moved away from the door. William remained at his post, processing everything he had overheard. As the hours passed, William found himself replaying the conversation in his mind. His military training had taught him the importance of the chain of command and respecting authority, but it had also instilled in him a deep sense of justice and protection for those who couldn't defend themselves. The three young Wales children had no voice in the palace hierarchy, no ability to respond to criticism or defend their characters. That evening, as William returned to his modest quarters on the castle grounds, he reflected on his oath of service. He had pledged to protect the royal family, but what did that mean when members of that family were speaking harmfully about other members? His duty had always seemed clear-cut before: protect against external threats, maintain security, ensure privacy. But this situation fell into uncharted territory. William's wife Sarah had noticed his unusual quietness during their evening phone call. After 30 years of marriage, she could read his moods even from a distance. "Something's troubling you, Will," she observed gently. "You've got that voice you get when you're wrestling with something important." "Just thinking about duty and what it really means," William replied carefully, unable to share the specifics of what he had heard. Sarah understood the constraints of his position and didn't press for details, but her concern was evident. That night, William lay awake, considering his options. He could ignore what he had heard, filing it away as palace gossip that wasn't his concern. He could request a transfer to a different post, removing himself from situations where he might overhear similar conversations. Or he could find a way to address the situation that honored both his duty to the crown and his conscience. The next morning brought new clarity to William's thinking. During his pre-dawn run around the castle grounds, he encountered Prince George walking one of the family's dogs with a junior staff member. The young prince greeted William warmly, asking about his morning routine and expressing interest in military fitness training. Their brief conversation reinforced William's impression of the boy's good character and natural leadership qualities. Later that day, while stationed outside a different room, William overheard Catherine speaking with her private secretary about upcoming charitable engagements. Her voice carried genuine warmth as she discussed ways to make visits more meaningful for the people they would meet. She specifically mentioned adjusting schedules to ensure her children could participate in age-appropriate ways, demonstrating their developing sense of service to others. The contrast between Catherine's thoughtful planning and Camilla's harsh criticisms crystallized William's resolve. These children deserved to have someone in their corner, someone who could observe and appreciate their genuine qualities without the complications of family politics or institutional pressures. William began to form a plan that would allow him to support the young Wales family without overstepping his boundaries or betraying his oath of service. It would require careful thought and precise execution, but his military experience had taught him that the most effective operations often began with quiet observation and strategic patience. As he concluded another day of service, William felt a sense of purpose that went beyond his regular duties. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities to demonstrate that true loyalty to the crown meant protecting all its members, especially those too young to protect themselves. The foundation for his silent stand had been laid, and he was prepared to build upon it with the same dedication that had defined his entire career. The castle settled into its evening rhythm, its ancient walls holding countless secrets and unspoken truths. Within those walls, a seasoned royal guard had made a decision that would ripple through the carefully maintained facades of royal life, driven by an unwavering commitment to justice and protection that transcended the complexities of palace politics. The weeks following William's troubling discovery passed with heightened awareness. Every interaction, every overheard conversation, every glimpse of the Wales children took on new significance as he quietly observed the dynamics within the royal household. His plan was beginning to take shape, but it required careful documentation and strategic thinking that drew upon all his military intelligence training. William had always been meticulous in his service, but now he approached his duties with the precision of a reconnaissance mission. He began keeping detailed mental notes of interactions between family members, staff responses to different royals, and most importantly, the actual behavior of the 3 children he had heard criticized so unfairly. During a family gathering in the castle's private dining room, William stationed himself in the adjoining corridor where protocol required a security presence. Through the partially open service door, he could observe the family dynamics that rarely made it into public view. Prince George sat attentively as his father explained the historical significance of various portraits hanging in the room. The 10-year-old asked thoughtful questions about the Battle of Trafalgar and expressed genuine interest in Lord Nelson's naval strategies. Princess Charlotte, meanwhile, had noticed that one of the elderly staff members was struggling to serve the heavy soup tureen. Without prompting from her parents, she quietly stood and offered to help carry lighter items, her natural empathy shining through in the simple gesture. When gently redirected to her seat by her mother, Charlotte accepted the guidance gracefully, understanding that help would come from other staff members. 5-year-old Prince Louis demonstrated remarkable patience for his age, sitting properly throughout the lengthy meal despite the obvious temptation to explore the interesting artifacts scattered around the historic room. When he did become restless, Catherine managed the situation with quiet redirection rather than harsh correction, and the little prince responded immediately to her gentle guidance. These observations stood in stark contrast to the criticisms William had overheard from Camilla. The children displayed natural curiosity, genuine kindness, and age-appropriate behavior that any grandparent should celebrate rather than condemn. Their minor imperfections were exactly what would be expected from children their ages, and their positive qualities far outweighed any temporary lapses in formal protocol. The following week brought a significant test of William's developing strategy. During a private tea gathering in the Queen Consort's sitting room, Camilla was hosting several members of her own social circle. William's position outside the door provided him with clear audio of their conversation, which quickly turned to family matters. The Wales children continued to be a source of concern, Camilla confided to her guests, her voice carrying the authority of someone speaking from experience. Catherine seems incapable of instilling proper discipline. Just yesterday, during a private family function, Charlotte was practically climbing on furniture, and George spent the entire time pestering the staff with ridiculous questions. Lady Patricia Bramwell, one of Camilla's longtime friends, made sympathetic sounds. Children today seem to lack the restraint we had drilled into us from birth. Perhaps it's the influence of Catherine's middle-class background showing through. William felt his blood pressure rising at the casual classism embedded in the comment, but he maintained his professional composure while carefully memorizing every word. The conversation continued with increasingly harsh assessments of Catherine's parenting abilities and predictions about the negative impact on the monarchy's future. "I've tried to offer guidance," Camilla continued with exaggerated patience in her voice. But Catherine becomes quite defensive when anyone suggests alternative approaches. It's as if she believes her methods are beyond criticism, despite the obvious results. Mrs. Eleanor Fitzwilliam, another guest, added her own observations. The children's behavior at last month's charity gala was quite telling. Running about, interrupting conversations, showing no awareness of proper protocol. In our day, royal children were seen and not heard. William knew exactly which charity gala they were referencing. He had been present for security purposes and had witnessed a completely different version of events. The children had been remarkably well behaved throughout the formal portions of the evening. Their moments of movement and interaction had occurred during specifically designated informal periods, when guests were encouraged to mingle freely. Rather than interrupting adult conversations, the children had been engaging with other young attendees and showing genuine interest in the charity's mission. Prince George had spent considerable time listening to testimonials from beneficiaries of the children's education program, asking thoughtful questions that demonstrated both his understanding and his genuine concern for others. Princess Charlotte had made several elderly guests smile with her polite inquiries about their involvement with the charity. Even Prince Louis, despite his young age, had remained close to his parents and followed their lead throughout the evening. The distortion of these positive interactions into evidence of poor behavior revealed something troubling about the source of the criticism. William began to suspect that Camilla's complaints had less to do with the children's actual conduct and more to do with deeper family tensions that extended beyond parenting philosophy. As the tea gathering continued, the conversation took an even more concerning turn. Perhaps it's time someone had a frank discussion with Charles about setting clearer expectations, Lady Patricia suggested. The king surely recognizes the importance of maintaining royal standards, even within the family. "Oh, Charles is quite aware of my concerns," Camilla replied with satisfaction in her voice. "I've made it clear that future public engagements need to be planned with more consideration for the institution's dignity. These children cannot continue to treat every royal occasion as their personal playground." William realized that Camilla's criticism wasn't remaining within her private social circle. She was actively working to influence the king's perception of his grandchildren and their mother. This revelation transformed William's understanding of the situation from private gossip to potential manipulation that could have lasting consequences for the Wales family's position within the monarchy. That evening, William requested a brief meeting with his immediate supervisor, Commander James Morrison. Their conversation took place in Morrison's office, where decades of military discipline and mutual respect allowed for frank discussion. "I need to discuss a sensitive matter that may require guidance on protocol," William began carefully. Morrison, a veteran of royal service himself, immediately understood that serious concerns had prompted this unusual request. "I've become aware of situations that may impact the security and well-being of certain family members," William continued, choosing his words with precision. Nothing that represents immediate physical danger, but circumstances that could affect the stability of relationships within the household. Morrison leaned forward, his expression serious. Are you referring to threats from outside sources or internal dynamics? Internal dynamics that may be creating stress for younger family members, William replied diplomatically. I'm seeking guidance on the appropriate channels for reporting concerns that don't fall under traditional security protocols. The commander considered this carefully. Royal household management involved complex webs of relationships and responsibilities that extended far beyond simple security concerns. Any observations that suggest potential harm or distress among family members should be documented and reported through proper channels, he concluded. Your oath includes protecting all members of the royal family, and that sometimes requires difficult judgment calls. This conversation provided William with the authorization he needed to proceed with his developing plan. Morrison's guidance confirmed that his duty extended beyond physical protection, to include safeguarding the emotional well-being of those under his care, particularly the children who had no voice in palace politics. The next phase of William's strategy involved careful documentation of positive interactions involving the Wales children. During a visit from the Spanish royal family, he observed Prince George serving as an unofficial young ambassador, greeting the visiting children with perfect manners and helping them feel comfortable in the unfamiliar environment. The Spanish queen later commented to Catherine about George's exceptional politeness and natural leadership qualities. Princess Charlotte's behavior during the same visit provided further evidence of excellent upbringing. When the youngest Spanish princess appeared overwhelmed by the formal atmosphere, Charlotte quietly included her in conversations and offered to show her the castle's family portrait gallery. Her intuitive understanding of how to make others feel welcome demonstrated emotional intelligence far beyond her years. Prince Louis, despite being the youngest in the group, followed his siblings' examples and showed remarkable adaptability to the formal requirements of the international visit. His natural enthusiasm remained evident but was appropriately channeled into positive interactions that enhanced rather than detracted from the diplomatic atmosphere. William documented these observations alongside numerous other examples that painted a picture completely contrary to Camilla's characterizations. He noted instances of the children showing respect for staff, demonstrating curiosity about their royal heritage, displaying genuine empathy for others, and handling the pressures of public life with remarkable resilience. The contrast became even more apparent during a private birthday celebration for one of the castle staff members. Catherine had organized a small gathering to honor Mrs. Agnes Murphy, who had served the royal household for 40 years. The Wales children participated enthusiastically, with Prince George presenting a handwritten speech thanking Mrs. Murphy for her service, Princess Charlotte offering to help serve refreshments, and Prince Louis presenting a drawing he had made specially for the occasion. The genuine affection and respect the children showed for Mrs. Murphy and other staff members reflected the values Catherine and William were instilling in their children. Their interactions demonstrated that royal privilege came with responsibility to treat all people with dignity and kindness, regardless of their position in the household hierarchy. Meanwhile, Camilla's criticism of these same children continued in various settings. During a meeting with her private secretary, she complained about having to accommodate the children's schedules for upcoming royal events. We cannot continue to plan every engagement around the whims of 3 children, she declared. The institution's needs must take precedence over individual family preferences. William recognized the fundamental misunderstanding embedded in this complaint. The Wales family's careful consideration of their children's participation in royal duties reflected responsible parenting, not indulgence. Catherine and William consistently made thoughtful decisions about which events were appropriate for each child's developmental stage and which might be overwhelming or inappropriate. The couple had established clear guidelines that prioritized their children's education, emotional well-being, and gradual introduction to royal responsibilities. This approach ensured that the children would grow into their future roles with genuine understanding and enthusiasm, rather than resentment or rebellion. As winter approached, William's documentation had grown extensive. He had recorded dozens of instances where the Wales children's behavior exceeded reasonable expectations for their ages, demonstrated exceptional character development, and reflected excellent parenting. He had also documented numerous occasions where Camilla's complaints were directly contradicted by observable facts. The weight of this information pressed on William's conscience. His military training emphasized the importance of acting on intelligence that could prevent harm, but his position in the royal household required extreme discretion and respect for family privacy. Finding the right balance would require careful planning and impeccable timing. The opportunity for action would come sooner than William expected, triggered by an incident that would test every principle he held dear and force him to choose between silent observation and active intervention in defense of three remarkable children who deserved better than the unfair criticism they were receiving in the shadows of their own home. The turning point came on a gray December morning when the castle was preparing for the annual Christmas celebrations. The Wales family had arrived early to participate in the traditional decoration of the state dining room, a private family activity that allowed the children to connect with royal traditions while creating lasting memories. William was assigned to security detail for the informal gathering, positioning him where he could observe both the family activities and monitor the surrounding corridors. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis worked enthusiastically alongside their parents, carefully hanging ornaments that had been crafted by local artisans. Their excitement was infectious as they learned about the history behind each decoration and the significance of various Christmas traditions within the royal family. Catherine guided their efforts with gentle encouragement, while William patiently answered their endless questions about royal Christmases past. The children's genuine joy and respectful handling of the precious ornaments demonstrated exactly the kind of behavior that should make any grandparent proud. Prince George took particular care with a delicate angel that had belonged to Queen Elizabeth II, treating it with the reverence it deserved, while sharing his knowledge of his great-grandmother's love for Christmas traditions. Princess Charlotte showed natural artistic instincts as she arranged garlands with careful attention to color and balance. Her suggestions for placement were thoughtful and creative, earning praise from the professional decorators who were assisting with the more complex arrangements. Her ability to collaborate effectively with both family members and staff reflected the social skills that would serve her well in future royal duties. Prince Louis, despite his young age, participated meaningfully in the activities by sorting ornaments by color and size, a task that required patience and attention to detail. His enthusiasm never crossed into disruption, and he responded immediately to gentle guidance from his parents when redirection was needed. The peaceful family scene was interrupted by the arrival of Camilla, accompanied by her lady-in-waiting and two of her grandchildren from her first marriage. The atmosphere shifted immediately, as formal protocols took precedence over the relaxed family gathering that had been developing naturally. "I see the children are already making quite a mess," Camilla observed as she surveyed the scene. Several ornament boxes were open on nearby tables, and colorful tissue paper was scattered where the children had been carefully unwrapping decorations. To William's trained eye, the scene represented normal, organized activity, but Camilla's tone suggested chaos and disorder. "We're having a wonderful time learning about the family traditions," Catherine replied diplomatically, her smile remaining warm despite the implied criticism. "The children are being very careful with everything." Camilla responded with obvious skepticism. "Perhaps it would be more efficient if the professionals handled the valuable pieces while the children focused on less delicate items." The suggestion effectively excluded the Wales children from meaningful participation in their own family's Christmas preparations. William watched as Prince George's excited expression faded slightly, and Princess Charlotte moved closer to her mother, sensing the change in atmosphere. Camilla's own grandchildren, Thomas and Laura, were older teenagers who observed the interaction with obvious discomfort. They had always enjoyed positive relationships with their step-cousins and seemed puzzled by their grandmother's critical tone toward the younger children. "The children have been handling everything beautifully," William's son Laura offered diplomatically. "George was just showing me the angel that belonged to the late queen. He knows so much about the family history." "Knowledge is important," Camilla agreed, "but proper behavior and respect for valuable items is even more crucial. These ornaments have been in the royal collection for generations and cannot be treated as toys." William bristled at the implication that the children had been treating precious items carelessly. Throughout the morning, he had observed them handling every piece with appropriate respect, and following their parents' guidance perfectly. Their excitement about participating in family traditions was exactly what should be encouraged, not criticized. The situation deteriorated further when Prince Louis accidentally dropped a small wooden ornament while attempting to hang it on a lower branch. The piece was unharmed, and Catherine immediately used the moment as a teaching opportunity about being careful, while reassuring her youngest son that accidents happen to everyone. "This is exactly what I mean," Camilla declared, seizing upon the minor incident as evidence of her broader concerns. "These children simply aren't ready for this level of responsibility. Perhaps next year, when they've matured a bit more." The implication that the children should be excluded from future family traditions struck William as particularly cruel. 5-year-old Prince Louis had been participating appropriately all morning, and his single small mistake was well within normal expectations for his age. Camilla's reaction seemed designed to create problems rather than solve them. Catherine's response demonstrated the grace and diplomatic skill that had made her a respected member of the royal family. "The children are learning through experience, which I believe is the most effective way to develop the respect and understanding they'll need for their future roles. We all made mistakes when we were learning these traditions. Some of us had proper supervision and correction when we made those mistakes," Camilla replied sharply. "Permissive approaches may be fashionable, but they don't prepare children for the realities of royal responsibility." The conversation was overheard by several staff members who had been assisting with the decorations. William noticed their uncomfortable expressions as they witnessed the family tension. The criticism of Catherine's parenting in front of staff undermined her authority and created an awkward dynamic that could affect future interactions. Thomas, Camilla's grandson, attempted to defuse the situation by suggesting that all the children work together on a particular section of decorations. His diplomatic instincts served him well as he guided the younger children into a collaborative activity that showcased their abilities while addressing his grandmother's concerns about supervision. However, Camilla's mood had shifted decisively negative, and she continued to find fault with the children's participation. When Princess Charlotte offered to help Thomas reach a high branch, Camilla criticized her for being presumptuous. When Prince George explained the history of a particular ornament to his step-cousin, she accused him of showing off inappropriately. The final straw came when Prince Louis, trying to be helpful, offered to clean up some of the tissue paper that had accumulated on a nearby table. As he gathered the colorful sheets, one piece caught on a small decorative sculpture, causing it to wobble slightly before settling back into place. No damage occurred, but Camilla reacted as if a major disaster had been narrowly averted. "This is precisely why children should not be involved in formal preparations," she announced loudly enough for everyone in the room to hear. "Their good intentions cannot compensate for their lack of coordination and judgment. Perhaps it would be better if Catherine took them to their playroom while the adults finished the important work." The suggestion was both insulting and inappropriate. The Christmas decoration activity was specifically designed as family time, and excluding the children would defeat its entire purpose. Moreover, the public nature of Camilla's criticism humiliated Catherine and undermined her position as a mother and as a senior member of the royal family. William felt his professional composure strain as he watched the 3 children process their step-grandmother's harsh words. Prince George's shoulders drooped as he realized his enthusiastic participation was being characterized as disruptive. Princess Charlotte moved even closer to her mother, her natural confidence shaken by the unexpected criticism. Prince Louis looked confused and hurt, unable to understand why his helpful gesture had caused such strong negative reactions. Catherine's response demonstrated remarkable restraint and dignity. "The children have been wonderful helpers today, and they're learning valuable lessons about our family traditions. I think we can continue successfully with appropriate guidance and patience." "Patience has its limits," Camilla replied coldly, "and institutional priorities must take precedence over individual preferences. These children need to understand that their wants and whims cannot drive royal scheduling and protocols." The characterization of the children's natural enthusiasm and desire to participate in family traditions as a wants and whims struck William as fundamentally unfair. Throughout his months of observation, he had seen these same children adapt gracefully to numerous royal requirements, demonstrate genuine interest in their heritage, and show remarkable maturity in handling the pressures of their unique positions. "Mrs. Thompson, Camilla's lady-in-waiting seemed uncomfortable with the escalating tension and attempted to suggest a compromise. Perhaps the children could continue with some of the decorating while Your Majesty focuses on the more delicate pieces that require experienced handling. The issue isn't just about delicate pieces, Camilla responded, clearly frustrated that her point wasn't being accepted. It's about establishing proper standards and expectations. If we make exceptions and accommodations for every childish impulse, we'll never develop the discipline and respect that royal duties require. William found himself thinking about his own grandchildren and how he would feel if someone spoke about them in such dismissive terms. The Wales children's behavior throughout the morning had been exemplary by any reasonable standard. Their enthusiasm for family traditions should be celebrated, not criticized. Their minor mistakes were part of normal learning processes that every child experiences. As the uncomfortable scene continued, William made a decision that would alter the course of his career and potentially change the dynamics within the royal household. His years of military service had taught him that there comes a moment when silent observation must give way to principled action, especially when those who cannot defend themselves are under attack. The opportunity for intervention came when Camilla stepped away from the main group to speak privately with Mrs. Thompson near the doorway where William was stationed. Their conversation was clearly audible, and its content provided the final confirmation that action was necessary. "I want this incident documented in the household report," Camilla instructed her aide quietly. Catherine's inability to control her children during a simple decorating activity demonstrates exactly the concerns I've been raising with Charles. The children's disruptive behavior and her defensive reactions to reasonable criticism show that more serious intervention may be necessary. William realized that Camilla intended to use the morning's events, which had actually showcased the children's positive qualities, as evidence against Catherine and her parenting approach. The distortion of facts into a negative narrative represented more than just family disagreement. It constituted a deliberate campaign to undermine Catherine's position and potentially affect the children's future within the royal family. The weight of his observations over the past months crystallized into a clear understanding of his duty. As a royal guard, his oath included protecting all members of the royal family from harm, including harm that came from within their own ranks. The 3 Wales children deserved to have someone speak truth about their character and behavior, especially when false narratives were being constructed to damage their reputations and their relationships within their own family. William's military training had prepared him for moments when difficult decisions must be made quickly, based on moral clarity rather than convenient politics. As he stood at his post, watching 3 remarkable children cope with unfair criticism from someone who should be supporting and encouraging them, he finalized his plan for taking a stand that would honor both his duty to the crown and his commitment to protecting those who could not protect themselves. The time for silent observation was ending. The moment for principled action was about to begin, and William was prepared to face whatever consequences would follow from his decision to defend the truth against deliberate distortion and to protect 3 innocent children from the harmful effects of family politics that should never have involved them in the first place. The opportunity William had been preparing for arrived 3 days after the Christmas decoration incident. King Charles had summoned Catherine for a private meeting in his study, a development that filled William with concern given Camilla's promise to document the children's supposed misbehavior. As the senior guard on duty, William was positioned outside the king's private study, placing him where he could monitor security while remaining aware of the conversation's general tone and direction. Catherine arrived precisely on time, her bearing composed despite what must have been considerable anxiety about the meeting's purpose. William had observed her strength and resilience throughout numerous challenging situations, but he sensed that this particular encounter carried unusual weight for her, and potentially for her children's future. The conversation began formally, with King Charles addressing various upcoming royal engagements and family obligations. However, the tone shifted when he brought up concerns about the children's behavior and their preparation for future royal duties. "I've received reports suggesting that the children may need additional guidance in understanding the protocols and expectations associated with their positions," the king said carefully. "It's important that they develop proper respect for royal traditions and understand the dignity required in their public and private conduct." William knew immediately that Camilla's version of the Christmas decorating incident had been presented as evidence of broader problems. The king's words reflected concerns that had been shaped by biased reporting rather than objective observation of the children's actual behavior and development. Catherine responded with the measured dignity that had served her well throughout her years as a royal family member. "The children are learning and developing appropriately for their ages, Your Majesty. They show genuine respect for family traditions and demonstrate remarkable adaptability to the requirements of their positions. Their enthusiasm for participating in royal activities reflects their growing understanding of service and duty." "Enthusiasm must be balanced with discipline," the king replied, his tone suggesting that he had been influenced by reports emphasizing problems rather than progress. Recent incidents suggest that more structured approaches to their education and behavior management might be beneficial. The word incidents struck William as particularly telling. The Christmas decorating activity had involved normal childhood behavior and learning experiences that any reasonable observer would consider positive. The characterization of these moments as incidents requiring intervention revealed how Camilla's negative narrative was distorting perceptions of the children's actual conduct. William made his decision, drawing upon his years of military experience in presenting critical intelligence to superior officers. He prepared to provide testimony that could counter the false narrative being constructed around 3 innocent children. His action would be unprecedented, potentially career-ending, and certainly controversial, but his conscience and his oath of protection demanded nothing less. At the next scheduled break in the conversation, William took the unusual step of requesting permission to speak with the king. Through established protocol channels, he communicated that he had relevant security observations that might inform the discussion currently taking place. Commander Morrison, when consulted about the unusual request, recognized the seriousness of William's concern and approved the approach. "If Sergeant Hayes believes he has information relevant to family security and well-being, His Majesty should have the opportunity to consider it," Morrison decided. 20 minutes later, William found himself in the unprecedented position of standing before the king and Catherine in the private study, preparing to present his carefully documented observations. His military bearing and decades of loyal service provided credibility for what he was about to share, but the political implications of his intervention could not be underestimated. "Your Majesty," William began with formal precision, "I have served as royal guard for the past 6 years, during which time I have had extensive opportunities to observe the behavior and development of the Wales children in various settings. I believe my observations may provide useful context for your current discussion." King Charles, clearly surprised by this unprecedented intervention from a guard, nonetheless indicated that William should proceed. Catherine remained silent, uncertain about what information William might share and how it might affect her situation. Prince George consistently demonstrates exceptional curiosity about royal history and traditions, William reported with professional clarity. "During family gatherings, I have observed him asking thoughtful questions about ceremonial procedures, showing genuine respect for inherited items, and displaying natural leadership qualities when interacting with visiting dignitaries' children." He continued methodically through his observations, providing specific examples of behavior that contradicted the narrative of problematic conduct. Princess Charlotte shows remarkable empathy and emotional intelligence, particularly during charitable visits and when interacting with staff members. Her responses to formal protocols demonstrate both understanding and adaptability. William's testimony about Prince Louis emphasized the 5-year-old's impressive patience during lengthy ceremonies and his ability to follow guidance from parents and staff. His enthusiasm never crosses into disruption, and his responses to redirection are immediate and appropriate. The king listened intently as William presented example after example of positive behavior, respectful conduct, and age-appropriate development. The contrast between these observations and the reports that had prompted the meeting became increasingly apparent. "Regarding the recent Christmas decorating activity," William continued, "I observed the children handling valuable ornaments with appropriate care, listening attentively to historical explanations, and demonstrating genuine excitement about participating in family traditions. The single minor accident that occurred involved no damage and was handled appropriately by all involved." King Charles interrupted to ask for clarification about the specific incident that had been reported to him. William provided a factual account that differed significantly from the version that had apparently reached the king's attention. "What you're describing doesn't align with the reports I received," the king observed, his expression thoughtful. "Are you suggesting that the children's behavior was actually exemplary during this activity?"
"Yes, Your Majesty."
"Their conduct throughout the morning exceeded reasonable expectations for their ages and demonstrated the positive effects of the guidance they received from their parents," William replied firmly. Catherine remained silent during this exchange, but William could see relief beginning to replace anxiety in her expression, as objective testimony countered the distorted narrative that had apparently been presented to the king. William then made his most crucial statement. "Your Majesty, throughout my period of service, I have consistently observed that the Wales children demonstrate respect for staff, genuine interest in their heritage, appropriate responses to guidance, and remarkable resilience in handling the pressures of their unique positions. Their behavior reflects excellent parenting and strong character development." The implications of William's testimony extended far beyond the immediate situation. By providing factual observations that directly contradicted negative reports, he was essentially documenting that someone within the royal household had been presenting false or distorted information to the king. King Charles asked several probing questions about specific incidents and William's opportunities for observation. The guard's responses demonstrated not only his professional competence, but also his detailed attention to the children's actual behavior, rather than superficial impressions. "These observations are quite different from other reports I've received," the king finally admitted. "Can you explain the discrepancy between your account and alternative perspectives on the same events?" This question put William in the delicate position of having to address the source of the misinformation without directly accusing Camilla of deliberate distortion. His response required diplomatic precision, combined with unwavering commitment to truth. "Your Majesty, different observers may focus on different aspects of the same events," William replied carefully. "My training emphasizes objective documentation of actual behavior rather than subjective interpretation of intentions or motivations. I can only report what I have directly observed." Catherine finally spoke, her voice carrying both gratitude and vindication. "Your Majesty, Sergeant Hayes has observed the children in numerous settings over an extended period. His professional assessment aligns with my own understanding of their development and behavior." The king spent several minutes considering the competing narratives he had received. William's testimony provided a framework for understanding that recent criticism of the children and their mother had been based on distorted information rather than factual assessment. "Sergeant Hayes, your observations suggest that my grandchildren are developing appropriately and that their mother is providing effective guidance," the king summarized. "Is that an accurate characterization of your testimony?" "Yes, Your Majesty. The children demonstrate positive character traits, respect for others, and genuine enthusiasm for their heritage. Their minor imperfections are consistent with normal childhood development and do not suggest any need for intervention or changes in their current guidance." King Charles then asked about William's motivation for presenting this testimony, a question that went to the heart of the guard's unprecedented action. "Your Majesty, my oath includes protecting all members of the royal family," William explained. "When false narratives threaten the well-being or standing of family members who cannot defend themselves, I believe that protection extends to providing factual information that counters those narratives." This response demonstrated that William understood the broader implications of his intervention. He was not simply correcting misunderstandings about specific incidents, but actively protecting the children and their mother from the harmful effects of a deliberate campaign of criticism based on distorted facts. The meeting concluded with King Charles expressing appreciation for William's professional observations and commitment to family welfare. Catherine was visibly relieved that objective testimony had countered the negative narrative that had been developing around her parenting and her children's behavior. However, William knew that his unprecedented action would have consequences that extended far beyond this single meeting. By effectively exposing the unreliability of other reports reaching the king, he had challenged power dynamics within the royal household and potentially created enemies among those whose criticism had been contradicted by his testimony. As he returned to his duties, William reflected on the weight of what he had accomplished. 3 children who deserved protection had received it, a mother who deserved support had been vindicated, and a false narrative that could have damaged family relationships had been exposed and corrected. But the forces that had created the original problem remained in place, and William suspected that his intervention, while successful in the immediate term, had set in motion a series of events that would test his resolve and potentially his career in the weeks and months ahead. The silent stand had been taken, but the battle for truth and justice within the royal household was far from over. William prepared himself for whatever challenges would arise from his decision to speak truth to power in defense of those who could not defend themselves. The aftermath of William's unprecedented testimony began to unfold within hours of his meeting with King Charles. Word of the guard's intervention traveled quickly through the complex network of royal household staff, creating ripple effects that would reshape relationships and power dynamics throughout the palace. Camilla's reaction was swift and predictably hostile. Within 2 days, William received a summons to meet with Sir Clive Alderton, the king's private secretary, for what was diplomatically termed a routine review of security protocols. However, William's years of military experience had taught him to recognize bureaucratic warfare, and he understood that this meeting represented the beginning of potential retaliation for his decision to speak truth about the Wales children. The meeting took place in Sir Clive's austere office, where the private secretary's demeanor was formal but noticeably cooler than during previous interactions. "Sergeant Hayes," he began without preamble, "questions have been raised about your recent expansion of traditional guard duties to include commentary on family matters." William maintained his military bearing while preparing to defend his actions. "Sir, I provided factual observations relevant to security concerns when specifically asked to do so through proper channels. My testimony was limited to directly observed behaviors and did not include personal opinions or interpretations beyond my professional assessment. Nevertheless," Sir Clive continued, "some members of the household feel that your intervention represents an inappropriate overreach of your assigned responsibilities. There are concerns about guards becoming involved in family dynamics beyond their security mandate." The coded language was clear. Camilla had complained about William's testimony and was seeking consequences for his actions. However, the private secretary's careful phrasing also suggested that he was not entirely comfortable with the pressure being applied to discipline a guard who had provided factual information when requested by the king himself. "Sir, my primary concern was the accuracy of information being used to make decisions affecting the welfare of family members under my protection," William responded with measured precision. "If my observations prevented misunderstandings or inappropriate actions based on incomplete information, then I believe I fulfilled my duty appropriately." The conversation continued for 30 minutes, during which Sir Clive explored various aspects of William's service record, his understanding of protocol boundaries, and his future intentions regarding involvement in family matters. Throughout the discussion, William sensed that the private secretary was conducting a thorough review designed to protect both the institution and William himself from political fallout. "Your service record is exemplary, Sergeant Hayes," Sir Clive finally concluded. "However, the sensitive nature of your recent intervention requires careful consideration of appropriate boundaries going forward. You will continue your current duties while we review protocols for security personnel who may observe situations relevant to family welfare." William understood that he was being placed under informal observation, while higher authorities determined how to handle the unprecedented situation he had created. The outcome would depend largely on King Charles's assessment of his testimony's value versus the political costs of supporting a guard who had contradicted the Queen Consort's narrative. Meanwhile, the impact of William's intervention was becoming apparent in subtle but significant ways throughout the palace. Staff members who had witnessed the Christmas decorating incident and Camilla's harsh criticism of the children began speaking more openly among themselves about the contrast between the children's actual behavior and the complaints being lodged against them. Mrs. Agnes Murphy, the long-serving staff member, honored at the birthday celebration William had observed, approached him privately during a shift change. "Sergeant Hayes," she said quietly, "what you did took real courage. Those children are lovely, and anyone with eyes can see how well they're being raised. It's about time someone said so officially." Her comment reflected a broader sentiment among staff who had direct contact with the Wales family. Many had observed the positive interactions, respectful behavior, and genuine warmth that characterized the children's relationships with everyone in the household. William's testimony had given voice to observations that many shared but few felt positioned to express. The most significant development came when Catherine herself requested a private conversation with William. The meeting was arranged through proper protocols, with Commander Morrison present to ensure appropriate procedures were followed. "Sergeant Hayes," Catherine began, her voice carrying deep gratitude, "I wanted to thank you personally for your courage in providing factual testimony about my children's behavior. Your observations made an important difference in helping His Majesty understand the reality of their development and conduct." William maintained professional composure while acknowledging the princess's gratitude. "Your Royal Highness, I simply provided accurate information when asked. The children's positive qualities speak for themselves, through their actions and interactions," Catherine continued. "Your testimony helped correct misunderstandings that could have affected important decisions about my children's future participation in royal activities. As their mother, I'm deeply grateful that someone was willing to speak truthfully about their character and behavior." The conversation revealed that King Charles had indeed been considering more restrictive approaches to the children's involvement in royal functions based on the negative reports he had received. William's factual testimony had provided the balance needed to prevent potentially harmful limitations on the children's natural development within their royal roles. "The children have no idea about the adult complexities surrounding them," Catherine observed, "but they deserve to have advocates who see their true qualities rather than critics who focus on normal childhood imperfections." William's response reflected his military understanding of protection duties. "Your Royal Highness, protecting family members includes ensuring that decisions affecting them are based on accurate information rather than distorted narratives." As weeks passed, the long-term consequences of William's intervention became clearer. King Charles began seeking more balanced information about family dynamics, consulting multiple sources rather than relying primarily on single perspectives. This change in approach led to more nuanced understanding of situations and better decision-making regarding the children's involvement in royal activities. The Wales children themselves remained largely unaware of the adult drama that had swirled around them, but they benefited from the improved atmosphere that resulted from William's advocacy. Their participation in royal events continued to develop naturally, with appropriate guidance and support rather than excessive criticism or restriction. Prince George's confidence in asking questions and engaging with royal traditions was reinforced rather than discouraged. His natural curiosity about history and ceremonies was recognized as a positive trait that would serve him well in his future role. During subsequent family events, his thoughtful observations and respectful behavior validated William's testimony about his character and development. Princess Charlotte's empathetic nature and artistic instincts continued to flourish without the cloud of criticism that had been building around her natural expressiveness. Her ability to connect with people of all ages during royal visits was celebrated rather than characterized as inappropriate behavior. William often observed her positive interactions with staff and visitors, confirming his assessment of her exceptional emotional intelligence. Prince Louis's energetic personality was accepted as age-appropriate rather than problematic. His moments of restlessness during long ceremonies were handled with patience and understanding, while his genuine enthusiasm for family traditions was encouraged. The 5-year-old's development proceeded naturally, without the pressure of premature expectations for adult-level protocol mastery. Camilla's response to the changed dynamics was one of grudging acceptance rather than reconciliation. Her criticism of the children became more subtle and less frequent, but William remained vigilant for signs that negative narratives might resurface in different forms. The Queen Consort's relationship with Catherine remained formally cordial, but lacked the warmth that genuine family affection would produce. The broader royal household adapted to the new understanding that security personnel might occasionally provide relevant observations about family welfare when requested through proper channels. William's precedent established that protection duties could extend beyond physical security to include factual testimony when false narratives threatened family members' well-being. Commander Morrison privately commended William for his professional handling of an unprecedented situation. "You maintained appropriate boundaries while fulfilling your oath of protection," he observed. "The fact that your testimony proved accurate and helpful validates the judgment you exercised in providing it." As the 1-year anniversary of William's intervention approached, the positive effects of his action continued to resonate throughout the palace. The Wales children had grown and developed without the burden of unfair criticism affecting their self-confidence or their relationships within the royal family. Their natural qualities had been allowed to flourish under supportive guidance rather than constant scrutiny for minor imperfections. King Charles had developed a more nuanced understanding of his grandchildren's personalities and capabilities, leading to better decisions about their involvement in royal activities and their preparation for future responsibilities. The balance between appropriate expectations and age-appropriate flexibility had been restored through access to accurate information. Catherine's position as a mother and royal family member had been strengthened by the vindication of her parenting approach. The factual testimony about her children's positive behavior and development had countered attempts to undermine her credibility and influence within the family hierarchy. William himself had found new purpose in his service through the knowledge that his protection duties could extend beyond traditional security concerns, to include safeguarding family members from harmful misinformation. His career had survived the unprecedented challenge, and his reputation had been enhanced by his courage in speaking truth when it mattered most. The silent stand had achieved its intended purpose. 3 remarkable children had been protected from unfair criticism. Their mother had been vindicated, and false narratives had been corrected through factual testimony. The palace had learned valuable lessons about the importance of balanced information and the courage required to speak truth in defense of those who cannot defend themselves. As William continued his duties, he remained vigilant for any situation where his protective oath might again require him to step beyond traditional boundaries in defense of truth and justice. His intervention had set a precedent that protection sometimes meant speaking up rather than staying silent, and he was prepared to honor that responsibility whenever it might be needed. The legacy of William's principled action extended far beyond the immediate situation that prompted it. The royal household had been reminded that truth matters, that children deserve advocates, and that those sworn to protect must sometimes find the courage to speak when silence would allow harm to continue unchecked. In the end, 3 young royals continued their development, surrounded by the love and support they deserved, their true qualities recognized and celebrated rather than criticized and distorted. William's silent stand had become a powerful voice for justice, demonstrating that sometimes the most important battles are fought not with weapons, but with courage, truth, and unwavering commitment to protecting those who cannot protect themselves.